So let's bring in Congresswoman Karen Bass, and from the U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge. Great to have both of you on tonight at the same time. Secretary Fudge, let's start with you. It is one thing to read about the problem, but it's another thing to see it with your own eyes. How did it make you feel to be on the ground here in Los Angeles? And how did seeing it perhaps change your perspective?
Well, clearly, I knew that there was a major crisis here of homelessness. But seeing it in the way that I saw it today and talking with the people who address it every day, those on the ground, it made the problem even worse than I thought it was. Because when I listened to all of the difficulties they have dealing with the federal government in general, but some of the things that HUD can do to be helpful, it made me realize not only the enormity of the problem, but what we can do as an agency to help them in their everyday work.
And part of that, Congresswoman Bass, is something that you've been wanting from HUD for a while. What is your specific ask of the Secretary?
Well, first of all, my specific ask right after she was nominated was to come to Los Angeles and to look at the problem and to see the magnitude of the problem. And so the very specific ask is around vouchers, that there's some flexibility so people who are formerly incarcerated can use the vouchers. And then also that we have vouchers that are actually directed to the project as opposed to the individual. Because Elex, you know that a lot of people have vouchers, but they're not able to find the housing. So if the voucher is connected to the property instead of the individual, it might be easier to get people housed.
And of course, because this show is a place for negotiating between Congress and the administration, Secretary Fudge, how does that deal sound? And what's the timing for potentially making it happen?
Well, Ellis, let me just say this. There is a crisis in housing across this country. It's not just homelessness. There's a crisis in affordable housing and low-income housing. And the only way we really take the pressure off the market is to build more housing. And so as we talked with developers today, as we talked with those who are continuums of care, those on the ground, I made a commitment to them that we would as quickly as possible find resources by way of project-based vouchers that they can use to begin projects that they have already in the pipeline. So I can't give you an exact date, but I will tell you it is not going to be very long. We know that in order to function with the kind of urgency they need, we need to do something quickly, and we will do that.
Recently, I was out with the Secretary of the VA when he came and visited for the first time, and he saw so many homeless people living outside the VA, and within a month, that problem was actually dealt with because he had so much power to cut through red tape that people had been dealing with for years. And then all of a sudden we saw a change. Are we looking at something like that happening now that you've been here? Are we looking at a matter of weeks? What are we looking at?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful that I'm going to be able to match the urgency that Secretary McDonough did. So I think it's going to be sooner than most people would think it would be.
And let me just say, Alex, knowing the Secretary when she was in the House and the leadership that she displayed there, I have no doubt that the job will get done. And what's most important is whether it's next week, next month, the point is that it happened. And that's the confidence that I have in her leadership and in her past ability to get things done.
I know, Congresswoman, you've talked about your ability to deliver relief from the federal government. I'm curious because the Secretary today said that LA is the epicenter of homelessness. Why is this visit happening now? Why did it take this long to be on the ground here?
You're asking me the question?
Well, Congresswoman, let's start with you and then we'll go to the Secretary.
Oh, sure. Well, you know, when the Secretary came in, and she can certainly tell you, you know, she inherited a HUD that really was just kind of adrift. And so when a new administration comes in, you know, the best way to do the handoff is to have cooperation from the previous administration. And Madam Secretary, if I'm not recounting this correctly, you came in, you encountered tremendous difficulty. So I've been talking to her all along. And I'm just happy that she was able to make the visit when she did.
To wrap things,
let me just say that I I've been to California. The first trip I made was to the San Francisco, Oakland area. I've been to San Diego. I have been to other parts of the state. I as well have been here and seen part of the problem, not in the way that it was directed toward me today, in a very formal way. But I have been here. I do know the problem. I've also looked at New York, which is the other end of the country that has this larger problem. So it's not that this is my first effort at trying to address the problem, because we address it every day. I am the chair of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. And so we know that this is something that we have to handle, but we have to do it in a way that makes some sense. We need to make sure that we're trying to push people toward permanent housing as opposed to a lot of the temporary housing. We need both, but certainly we need more direction towards permanent housing. So it's not my first effort at this.
And to wrap up, Madam Secretary, what is the one most important thing you think needs to be done by the federal government to have less of what you looked at today?
I think the one thing that we can do most is to assist the cities and the counties and the state and the developers to come together and find ways that we can quickly put housing up. Today I saw units that are built out of containers. I've seen a number of things. We need to be more creative, more responsive, and I think that we can do that when we all work together. I know that we know how. We just need to pull the resources together and the people together to make it happen.
All right, Congresswoman Bass, we're going to discuss some other issues with you, but Secretary Fudge, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Great to have you out here. Hope to see you out here again soon.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, we want to remind everybody, Fox 11's documentary about homelessness called Lost Angeles is streaming right now on YouTube, foxla.com, and Tubi. You can see an encore presentation airing on Fox 11 on Saturday, June 11th at 2:30 p.m. Congresswoman Bass is staying with us to talk about her run for L.A. mayor. Since Secretary Fudge is here on an official trip, she legally could not talk about your mayor's race. So hopefully you made the lawyers happy. You can. So let's talk about it now. With just days to go, what's your closing argument?
Oh, my closing argument is this is a crisis. I think our city is at a crossroads, and it's a question as to what direction that we're going to go in. And you really can't disparage government and then expect for government to work. And so I think that we need to declare a state of emergency on day one, but we have to have a whole of government approach. And that means the federal government, state, county, and city have to all come together to address this problem. That's the only way to respond to a crisis.
One thing I've heard from a lot of voters is that they like you, they're Democrats, they liked Eric Garcetti, but they're not happy with where the city is at right now. And they're worried that you are going to be a third term, essentially, of Mayor Eric Garcetti.
And you know what?
What do you say to that?
Well, it's so interesting because I have no idea what we have in common. I am on the federal level. I have worked on these issues for a very long time. There's no reason to collapse me with the current mayor. I think that my record speaks for itself. The issues that I've worked on trying to prevent homelessness, especially with young people, trying to transform the foster care system and making significant change in Washington, D.C. So I don't know what the comparison would be between the two of us. We certainly know each other. I respect the mayor, but we're not the same person.
What would be the biggest difference, though, if you're actually in there, or something that his administration maybe is doing that you want to change?
Well, I think the biggest difference would be how I have been in a leadership position, especially in the state, managed the state through a terrible crisis and did it in a way that allowed me, or we were awarded the JFK Profiles and Courage Award, and what I've been able to do since I've been in Washington, D.C. The deep relationships I have, my ability to work with the administration and to deliver for the city. My years as an activist, before I worked with City Hall every day, but I've never worked for City Hall. I've never been a City Hall insider. I spent the majority of my life working in the private sector, didn't run for office until much later in life. And so I believe I have private sector experience, government experience on basically every level. And I think that's what's different.
And she's talking about the California experience. She's talking about when she was Speaker of the Assembly, Governor Schwarzenegger was in there. California had a huge deficit, and they had to make some tough cuts in order to get the fiscal house in order in California. All right, so
as a matter of fact, Elex, our entire budget in California during the time I was Speaker is less than the surplus today.
I know. It would be much easier to be Speaker today. So let's talk, though, because every campaign is ultimately a choice. Joe Biden likes to say, don't compare me with the almighty, compare me with the alternative. We've heard the pitch for you. What is the pitch against Rick Caruso?
Well, I mean, I think the pitch against him, and I'd much rather talk about my own candidacy, but, you know, Mr. Caruso, and you know that he's somebody I've worked with and respect, but he has been his own person, meaning he has run his own company his entire life. He's never had a board of directors. He's never had shareholders. You cannot come into public office and command people to do things like you could when you own your own company. It is qualitatively different, and it's true he has some experience as a commissioner that is very different than being an elected official. And if you come in disparaging everybody that's there, I guarantee you, you will get nothing done. Government, we live in a democracy, not an autocracy. And so you have to figure out how to build relationships and cooperate. I think that that's something that is different. And he has spent his entire life, yes, he knows how to build, but for some reason has never built one unit of affordable housing. He has focused on very high-end luxury housing and very wonderful shopping centers. I don't think that that is what the city is looking for right now.
But do you think, though, I mean, it's pretty nice to go to the Grove, right? They're clean.
I love the Grove.
Not a lot,
absolutely.
Right? I mean, in terms of the state of this race, the way that the election works is that if one of you gets 50% plus one on Tuesday night, that person would become the mayor. That could be you, that could be him. It's possible that the two of you advance to a runoff. I know a lot of your allies, especially the Democratic Party, are expecting there to be a runoff. And right now, most polls show that that's what's likely going to happen. But are you concerned at all that some people may be keeping their money back, holding their fire, if you will, expecting there to be a runoff in the fall, and that maybe on Tuesday, Rick Caruso, who spent $30 million on this, could end up as mayor, and some of the chips have been left on the table?
Well, I don't know about that, but I would agree with you that at this point in time, I don't believe either one of us is going to be able to do that. But I think that his candidacy represents a flaw in our system. So he has spent $37 million. I want you to know that is more than any race in the entire country. And I do agree with him because he said that he thinks the voters are smarter than to just allow somebody to purchase the office. But I think that it is a flaw in our democracy that an individual can do that with basically no accountability, no constraints. And I think that is a problem. The Police Protective League, who I worked with very closely, helped them get meetings at the White House on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, has spent $4 million attacking me. And so I think that it is really incredible that this much money has been spent, and yet we're still running neck and neck.
And lastly, just to wrap things up real quickly, what's been your favorite part of all of this? Because you've been out and about a lot lately.
My favorite part is definitely going around the city and meeting and talking to people. I've really enjoyed that. I've been to every part of the city, and I've been meeting with folks with house meetings, house parties. You know, lots of people come. Everybody's excited now. And, you know, the election takes so long. I wanted to do this months and months ago. People weren't really interested. Now everybody is tuned in.
Yeah, we're all
and so it's been an exciting moment.
We're all paying attention. Congresswoman Karen Bass, great to see you. Thank you so much.